Oh, I will, Alex. It was an awful feeling, standing there on the other end of that finger of hers. Nana was insisting, but she was also pleading with me to listen to her wishes. I sat down on the edge of the bed and leaned in so that my head was right next to hers. When I spoke, it was with my eyes closed. Nana, I need for you to get serious about this recovery. Slow down a few miles an hour here and there and let this happen. You must, so be smart. The latter was something that Nana had been saying to me since I was 10 years old. Be smart. It was totally quiet in the room except for the sound of her leaning back against the pillow. When I opened my eyes, there were tears on her cheeks. That's it then? This is where I die? I pulled up a chair and sat down next to the bed. Later, I'd sleep in that same chair. Nobody's dying in here tonight, I said. Part 2. Fire with Fire. Chapter 28.
Tony Nicholson was already anxious enough, crazed, actually, and now he was running late thanks to an overturned tractor-trailer on the way out of the city.
Chapter 37.
Through the narrow peepholes in his mask, Zeus studied the two girls and thought they were gorgeous, just spectacular to look at. One was tall with long dark hair and alabaster skin. The other was a short dark beauty who was probably Hispanic. They had obviously been instructed not to ask about the mask or who he might be or anything of a personal nature. This was good. His mood couldn't have been any better. I think we're going to have a good time tonight, he said. That was all they needed to know for now, and actually, he had no idea how tonight might go, only that it was completely in his control. He was, after all, Zeus. They took his words as a cue to speak and introduced themselves as Catherine and Renata. "Can I take your coat?" Catherine asked, and somehow managed to make it sound seductive. "Get you something to drink? What would you like? We have it all." "No, thank you. I'm fine for now." He was polite, but definitely reserved, even strange. For one thing, he never touched anything outside the bedroom. His people knew as much and would work accordingly. "Let's go on in," he said. "You're the most beautiful girls I've seen here, by the way. I don't know which of you is prettier." Everything in the bedroom was laid out as it should be. The windows were curtained. There was a bottle of Grey Goose vodka, a new box of latex gloves on the dresser, and nothing else. No knickknacks, no carpets, no bedding, except for a fitted rubber sheet covering the mattress. "This is interesting." Catherine sat down and ran her hand over it. "Decor by Rubbermaid?" Zeus made no comment. He had the two girls undress first, then took off his own clothes except the mask, folding everything onto the dresser so he could leave the club just as neat and pressed as when he'd arrived. Finally, he opened his briefcase. "I'm going to tie you girls up," he said. "Nothing too scary. They told you about this, correct? Good. Have either of you been handcuffed before?" The shy one, Renata, shook her head no. The other, Catherine, put a come-fuck-me look into her eyes and nodded. "Once or twice," she said. "And you know what? I still haven't learned to be a good girl." "Don't do that, Catherine," he told her. She looked at him as if she didn't know what he was talking about. "Don't ever play act for me. Please. Just be yourself. I can tell the difference." Before there could be any more nonsense, he tossed a pair of cuffs onto the bed. "Put those on, please. What I'd like, I want you to share them. One cuff for each of you." While the girls clipped the cuffs on, he slipped his hands into a pair of gloves and took out the rest of his gear. 2 more pairs of cuffs, a new skein of hardware store rope, 2 red rubber ball gags with black leather straps. "Just lie back now," he said, and went over to Renata first. He could see something interesting now, mounting concern in her eyes, the beginning of fear. "Give me your free hand," he said. Then he cuffed her wrist to the bedpost. "Thank you, Renata. You're very sweet. I like compliant women. It's my vice." As he walked around to the other side, Catherine arched her back a little and widened her eyes, more vacant than scared. "Please, don't hurt us. We'll do anything you want, I promise," Catherine said. She was getting him pissed, already, like some cock-teasing little wife doing her coital duty. He slapped on the last cuff and secured it to the other bedpost and started fitting the gag into her mouth before she could say any more and ruin tonight. "I can tell you're still acting, and you're not good at it," he told her. "Now, you're making me a little angry. I'm sorry. I don't like myself when I get like this. You won't either." He tightened the strap at the back of her head. He used all of his strength, and he was a powerful man. The girl tried to say something, but it came out as a muted grunt. He'd caused her pain. Good. She deserved it. When he stepped back, the look on Catherine's face had changed completely. She was afraid of him now. That wasn't something you could fake. "Much better," he said. "Now, let's see if I can think of anything else to improve that performance of yours. Oh, how about these?" He reached into his black briefcase and pulled out a taser gun and pliers. "Catherine, that's wonderful. Your improvement is just outstanding. It's all in the eyes."
Chapter 38.
Nicholson felt as if he'd been drinking coffee all night instead of expensive scotch. He squinted at the headlights on Lee Highway, wishing for nothing more than a nightcap, an Ambien, and a few hours away from his own tortured thoughts. It was done, anyway. He'd wiped the hard drive and taken the disk away with him. He'd recorded Zeus's session with the two girls. He'd witnessed the horror show. The question now was what to do with it. It was tempting to drive around all night, put the thing in his safe deposit box, and hopefully never go back to it again. On the other hand, he thought, if the need did arise, he'd be smart to keep it closer at hand, just in case. Nicholson had never indulged in the idea that this scheme of his could go on forever. The discreet club and the dirty blackmail had been a delicate balance. With Zeus in the mix, it was untenable, and the madman showed no sign of slowing down. If Nicholson wanted out, he was going to have to disappear, and sooner rather than later. One contingency plan after another ran through his head as he drove. The offshore account in the Seychelles had just over $2 million in it. There was $150,000 coming from Temple Suitor, and then the Al-Hamad party next week, which promised to be good for at least as much. It was no lifetime reserve, but it was certainly enough to get him out of the country and keep him more than comfortable for a while. Definitely a couple of years, maybe longer. He could fly through Zurich and lie low for a few weeks until he could get a second passport. Lots of countries offered acquisition programs. Ireland might draw the least notice. Then he could use it to fly back out again, perhaps heading east. He'd always heard the trade in flesh was outrageous in Bangkok. Maybe it was time to find out. Meanwhile, there was Charlotte. God, what had he been thinking when he married her? That he would turn that lump of clay into something worth keeping? She'd been a little nothing of a London schoolteacher when they met. Now she was a little nothing of an American housewife. It was like some kind of cruel joke. On him. One thing was certain. Mrs. Nicholson would definitely not be making the trip east or wherever he ended up. The only question was whether he should find someone to finish her off. Just one more body at this point, and well worth the $20,000 or $30,000 it would cost. Anything to keep that gob of hers from flapping after he was gone. It was just after 4 a.m. when Nicholson finally got home. His mind was still racing as he came down the short curved slope of his driveway, and he nearly rear-ended the black Jeep four-door parked right in front of the garage. What the hell? His first cogent thoughts were of the disc in his glove box, and of Zeus. Jesus, was it possible somebody already knew about the recording? Could it be true? Not wanting to find out, Nicholson jammed the car into reverse, but even that was too little too late. A fat man was already at his side window, pointing a handgun and shaking his head no.
Chapter 39.
What was this, The Sopranos? It certainly looked like it to Nicholson. There were two of them. A second hoodlum-looking gent stepped into the glow of the headlights, pointing another gun at his face. The fat one opened Nicholson's door for him and then stepped back. The guy's mouth hung open a little and his cheap golf shirt was tucked in, leaving an impressive curve of belly suspended in midair. It seemed inconceivable that someone as sloppy as this should be working for Zeus. Which left the obvious question. "Who the hell are you?" Nicholson asked. "What do you want with me?" "We work for Mr. Martino." The accent was New York or Boston or something, East Coast American. Nicholson slowly got out of the car, keeping both hands in sight. "Okay then, who the hell is Mr. Martino?" he asked. "No more stupid questions." The corpulent thug gestured Nicholson toward the house. "Let's go inside. We're right behind you, bub." It occurred to Nicholson that he'd already be dead if this were a straightforward hit, so that meant they wanted something else. What? They were barely inside the front door when Charlotte Nicholson's thin, very irritating voice came seeping down from the upstairs hall.
"Babe, who's that with you? Isn't it late for guests?"
"It's nothing, not your concern. Go back to bed, Charlotte." Even now, he felt like throttling her just for being where she shouldn't be. Her bare splayed feet and legs came into the light from the foyer as she took a step down.
"What's going on?"
she called out again. "Did you not hear me? Go, now." She seemed to pick up on his tone anyway and floated back into the darkness. "Stay up there," he told her. "I'll come and get you later. Go to sleep." He took his two unexpected guests through to the great room at the back for more privacy. Also, the bar was there, and Nicholson headed straight for it. "I don't know about you fellas, but I could use a drink," he said, then felt a sharp crack at the back of his skull. He stumbled down onto his knees. "What the fuck do you think this is, a social call?" shouted the fat guy. Nicholson felt angry enough to fight, but he was in no position to do it. Not even close. So he pulled himself up, then onto the sofa. Thankfully, his vision was slowly coming back into focus. "So, what the hell do you want at 4 a.m? The fat one hovered over him. "We're looking for one of our guys. He came down here about a week and a half ago and we haven't heard from him since." Christ, he wanted to lay out this fat bastard, but that wasn't going to happen, at least not right now. But someday, somewhere. "I'm going to need more information than that. What guy? Give me a hint." "The name's Johnny Tucci," said Fat Boy. "Who? Oh, never heard of him. Tucci? Oh, did he come to my club? Who is he?" "Don't bullshit us, man." The smaller punk pushed in close now with a rush of cigarette and body stink. "We know all about your little place in the country, okay?" Nicholson sat up straight on the couch. This might have more to do with Zeus than he'd thought, or maybe with his business on the side. "That's right," the punk went on. "You think Mr. Martino sends his people down here for a vacation?" "Listen, I still have no idea what you're talking about," he told them. That much was partly the truth. Fat Boy hunkered down on the burled wood coffee table and lowered his gun for the first time. It might have been an opening if the other punk weren't so close by. "I'm going to lay it out for you then," he said in an almost conciliatory tone. "One of our guys is missing. Whoever's been contracting with our boss isn't easy to track down. So far, all we got is you. And that means our problem just became your problem. You understand?" Nicholson was afraid that he did. "Well, what do you expect me to do about our problem?" The guy shrugged, then scratched his stubbly chin with the barrel of his gun. "Bottom line, we gotta deliver somebody back to Mr. Martino. So you do some asking around, find out what you can, or you'll be the one we bring back." "Or the little lady up on the stairs," the other one said. "You can have the little lady," Nicholson said. "We'll call it even." The heavy man smiled finally, and then he stood up. The night's business was clearly done. "I'll take that drink to go," he said to Nicholson. "You just stay put." He waddled over to the bar where his buddy was already helping himself to as many bottles as he could carry in both arms.